Country people don't just lament the weather, we have to decide to shoot animals born in a bad weather year. Neil Roundtree explains why. Plus he's out to shoot marauding stags on farmland. We have a £50, money not weight, catapult for you to win. A filmmaker is back from a hunting trip to Kazakhstan, but was it as dreamy as his film makes out? And the general licences. Who's to blame? I'm in London to ask the politicians. Welcome to Fieldsports Britain. It's July on the west coast of Scotland and the sun is shining. Everyone's enjoying it, the Reds, young and old. The fallow and the roe. The long days mean Neil can spend his time breathing in the surroundings and observing, mentally recording and assessing its residents.
Trotting now is a hind with her calf of this year and her daughter of last. Now if you look at her daughter of last, she's quite slender really, she's quite small. Look how big her younger sibling is in comparison, going into the trees now. So this year is a totally contrasting year on last, and I think that the cohort or the generation of last year will never quite reach what the deer this year will reach if the grazing and the climatic conditions stay the way they are. So from a deer management point of view, the important point to make there is the chances are that the entire born generation of last year, with one or two minor exceptions, will never be great deer. And if they're not, then why keep them in the herd? We spent the whole of last year lamenting the weather, rightly so, and they basically started with a wet back in the summer and it never dried. And this year has been contrastingly different. And it's a point that you have to make about deer. They can put condition on very rapidly, but what they can do is lose condition very rapidly. But they're a robust animal. They're at the northern extremity of their range here, but they are robust, and given opportunity they will respond. And this year is looking pretty good. I mean, considering the hinds came out of the winter lean, the calves that they have born are good, strong looking calves, and this great spell of weather, and it's unusual to hear me talking this year that it's been a great spell of weather. There's a lot more grass about, there's a lot more clover about, and they've had a drier back, and the deer are making well. The hinds are making well, and we'll see stags shortly, and we're going to see the same again there. We'll look at a stag. I'm trying to find him just now. That we saw him last year as a 13 pointer, and this year he's a 17 pointer. So he's definitely done much better.
Cool. Hello. Hey. Bye-bye. Bye now. Good evening. Bye. Bye.
July is also a time of year to do some policing. Red deer where they shouldn't be, foxes giving the sheep too much of a hard time. This evening he spotted stags in a hayfield, and to keep the neighbours happy, the greedy visitor must go.
At the moment he's in the middle of a silage park, and we don't really want to have to drive across it to get him out. So he's coming gently this way. So what we'll do is we'll go round and we'll come into another spot where we can get a shot at him. There's nothing stealthy about the approach. two big stags. See, the nearer one of the two is certainly a 13 pointer. And the one behind him is a big 10. So ideally we don't want to shoot either of those. But we want to send the clear message that they're not welcome. What you'll find is you get 2 or 3 big fellas start this, and then you get like the wee stag you've shot just now. They'll all do this. And unfortunately for these boys, this will end in tears. Which is a shame because you can see yourself doing, they're exceptional stags. We'll try to open less gates on the way back. So last year we came looking for marauding deer and we didn't find it, but you found them tonight. And I think the blazer's quite an effective tool for that. There you go. Wee tip for you if you're ever doing sort of controlling marauders in silage parks and they're well out into the grass, don't be inclined to gralloch them. Right in the middle of the park, always take them into the edge out of the road. So you don't leave any of the waste stomach content lying on the ground, it gets picked up with the silage bales.
This will eat well, and every bit will be used. The stomach wall is a delicacy for some, and this one is destined for the smaller members of the Rowntree clan. The terriers used for controlling fox numbers.
So what we're doing here, David, we try with every element of the deer, and you can see the excitement here of what's going on. Not to waste anything that's useful. And one of the best things you can give your terriers for packing, and you can see at the moment there, look, see, he's got hold of it through the bars. And now she's got hold of it too. So one, it's quite good for strengthening their jaws and keeping them in good spirits. But the other thing it does, it puts terrific condition on them. So what I do throughout the main part of the stalking season is I feed them tripe. And it puts a terrific skin on them. Here, Manny. So we have here, that's a Lakeland Terrier. The one that's just disappeared into the kennel is a Patterdale. And then the two opposite, you've got a Parson Russell on the right and a Patterdale Cross on the left. So I run about 4 terriers. Stevie runs a similar number of terriers. And in the spring of the year, because the sheep on the estate need protection, we lose quite a lot of lambs. Well, not quite a lot, but when they decide to have an impact, they can always be significant. What we do is we go around the dens and we deal with any foxes. Particularly what we've had to do now with the rise in the badger population is to make sure that we have areas where the den's active, and what you'll find is you'll find debris at the mouth of the hole, which will classically be the heads and feet of lambs, part of lamb carcasses. And nobody probably likes the idea of folk having to control foxes when there's young foxes in the den. But at the end of the day, it's a predator situation. The fox, if you don't control them, will have an unsustainable impact on the lamb production on the estate. So I'll feed the other two while we're at it. I don't know about you, it's not my favourite. I can't see me going for tripe and onions. To be honest now, in Scotland, I mean, particularly in the West Highlands, good terriers are quite rare, and to actually get good dogs when you need to replace them, we've had to start breeding our own, or bringing them up from the south, because getting a decent terrier now is a struggle. And a lot of people have got terriers that might look the part, but we need terriers that actually act the part as well.
Next to the kennels is a chicken run, or should that be fortress? Foxes are cunning, but this seems overkill.
One of the things that's worth talking about, David, is that the legal and illegal predator control, and the tragedy these days is people only connect gamekeepers with illegal predator control, and the tragedy is it's one or two bad apples that have got a lot of very competent practitioners across the UK a bad name. And we're fully aware of what we can and can't do, and this is a classic example. We've stepped away from the dog kennel, having talked about terriers and fox control, and we're now next to Faye's chicken coop. And you'll notice the structure that's around it, and this is purely because of the pine marten. And if we didn't keep the chickens in a structure like this of an evening, we wouldn't have any. And one of the most common things to see, and we'll probably catch it this year in a winter's night, if you go out here and you're actually doing fox control or lamping or that kind of thing, it's not uncommon to see up to 20 pine martens in a night, whereas you might only see 2 or 3 foxes. So you were asking, David, do they have an impact on anything else? Well, you'll notice what we're trying to do around here is to sort of protect and expand the oak wood. And one of the things that I have as an agenda, not just trying to bring wildcats back into the area, but one of my pet passions is the red squirrel. And when we're talking about the pine marten as we walk away there, it's an interesting debate you hear going on further south, that people will tell you that the pine marten is a great thing for grey squirrels. I would say that the pine martens here have a negative impact on the red squirrels. And I've heard stories they say, oh, they can't catch red squirrels because they go to the ends of the branches and it'll support the red squirrel but won't support the pine marten. Evidence here and what we observe doesn't support that. There's no doubt about it that the single biggest impact on the red squirrel in this area is the pine marten, without a doubt. You can actually see on the oak tree there, if you look, you can see a squirrel feeder. And we'll actually see the debate going on between the pine marten and the squirrel here. And so far, the last twice we've observed it, the red squirrel's lost. A lot of the old stalkers used to gather this and keep it in their pocket.
We finished this visit on the hill with some fieldcraft. We've looked at this nutrient-rich plant before. It has other benefits.
Last year. So this is the plant that has a single root structure that goes right down onto the bedrock, picks up all the trace elements. And when people talk about stags going to the mossing in the spring of the year, it's that, the cannock, the draw moss, the bog cotton. That's what they're eating. Okay? And not only if you're using it to stalk stags in the high ground, these are one of the things you'll use to check the wind and see what's going on. We let this go and we let it drift down the wind. We'll do it again there and let you see it go. Watch it with your binoculars. Okay? And as the wind carries it, like thistledown, it floats round the corrie and it follows the wind. And very often when you're looking for an approach into a corrie on a steep piece of ground, by watching that bit of cannock with decent binoculars, you can see where the gap in the wind is and you can find a way to get to a safe shooting distance. That's part of the great thing with having good optics.
Next time, Neil leaves Ardnamurchan and heads north for the roe deer rut. And he knows quite a lot about them too. Thanks to Neil, and thanks to Leica and to Blaser who sponsored that piece. Links to them in the description below. Now, David and Kai have bogged off to Croatia. Here they are at the airport.
I take my own chef with me these days.
Is that good?
Works well.
So it's Aaron on the Fieldsports Channel News Stump.
This is the Fieldsports Channel news. A fire has swept over unkeepered moorland in Murray. The blaze destroyed 23 square miles of habitat at the height of the nesting season. More than 50 local gamekeepers joined fire crews to fight the blaze. A keeper from the estate reports that of 22 blackcock leks on the ground, only 1 remains. This footage from Fieldsports Channel viewer Bert Burnett shows the devastation. Possibly started by a disposable barbecue or arson, the fire was only stopped when it reached the fire breaks created by gamekeepers on surrounding grouse moors. However, the message that gamekeeping is good for the moorland is not getting through to the public. There are moves to ban grouse shooting on Yorkshire waterland. 125,000 members of the public have signed a petition asking Yorkshire Water to end its sporting leases on the land it owns near Holmfirth. Animal rights activists from StopTheShoots.com plan protests in 17 town centres across Yorkshire this Saturday, the 25th of May. The Angus Glens Moorland Group have been working with children with a series of estate visits. In partnership with Scottish Youth and Countryside Education Trust, the group gave 37 students from 3 local high schools an insight into working life on a local estate. The youngsters got to see the vehicles used to carry out the work that's done on the hill and the maintenance that's performed around the clock to keep the estate running. They gained an understanding of moorburn, of the equipment used and its benefits. The RSPB has called for centralised control of bird shooting. Its submission to the government's consultation on general licences recommends a means of monitoring the levels, justifications and methods by which wild birds are killed or taken. It also wants a review of larsen and other cage traps. More on general licences after this bulletin as Charlie reports on the first parliamentary kicking of Natural England. A new dog theft law will be debated in the UK Parliament. A new petition to include pet theft as a specific offence under the animal welfare law has topped 100,000, so it will have to be debated in Parliament. In July 2018, following a petition signed by more than 100,000, then Minister George Eustace refused to tighten the laws on pet theft. This is Lottie, stolen 2 years ago in East Yorkshire. There's a £5,000 reward for her return. The last major shooting event before the Olympics is about to take place. Team GB has announced the athletes selected to represent Great Britain and Northern Ireland in the 2019 European Games in Minsk next month. 12 shooters will be going, including Fieldsports Channel regulars Aaron Heading and Abby Ling for Olympic trap and Amber Hill on the Olympic skeet. The women team members outnumber the men 7-5. Meanwhile, on the sporting side of clay shooting, you can catch up with the action on Laporte's YouTube channel, which is providing coverage of last weekend's 2019 US Open. An Australian Olympic shooter faces a gun ban. Hayley Chapman competed alongside her father in the 25-metre pistol event in the 2012 Olympics in London, and now does marketing for Shooting Australia. The 27-year-old may have her firearms licence revoked following a police check on her home in Adelaide in February. Vegan protesters are turning more violent across Europe. Vegans are hitting fast food restaurants with fake blood. This protest took place in Brighton. Meanwhile, protesters in Belgium had their car rolled over by angry farmers at a protest outside a pig farm. A released bear in the French Pyrenees has been killing sheep. A bear called Claverina, brought from Slovenia and released into the mountains of the Nevers, has killed 8 sheep, despite assurances that she wouldn't. Farmers say that they will shoot her. Facebook has banned an election campaign from a Swedish politician because it included an image of a gun. Swedish politician Ella Bolin hunts and is happy to make it a part of her campaigning message. However, Facebook is not. Students at a school in Canada went on a class buffalo hunt and shot a £1,500 bison. As a part of a field trip, high schoolers in the Yukon on fat tyre bikes hunted the bison. With teachers and their parents, they cooked and ate it. And finally, a Sussex man has caught a 2-foot-long brown rat in his garden. Ash Hammond from Worthing spotted the large rodent running through his garden over the course of 3 days and got it with a spade. He says the rat was as big as a size 10 shoe and 2 foot in total, making it the size of a small cat. Thanks to Steve Kearney for sending this story. Of course, Mr. Hammond has had death threats from animal rights activists. You are now up to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stalking the stories, fishing for facts.
Thank you, Aaron. And you can see more news stories on the front page of our website. Fast way to get there is F Channel. Now, Michael Gove has probably decided that he'll be far away and Prime Minister by the time the general licences are sorted out. Well, not so fast, Michael. I'm in Westminster and the blame game has already begun. It's not our fault, says Natural England.
I'm afraid I had very scant knowledge of the idea of general licences.
The system was invented by MAF in about 1992, we think. DEFRA carried on the system. When DEFRA delegated it to us, we carried on with exactly the same system.
We are acting on delegated powers from the Secretary of State, so DEFRA, the ultimate policy decision maker, we are acting on their behalf.
The Natural England bosses were in front of a parliamentary committee to explain how they managed to mess up the general licences so profoundly.
The select committees, we sort of wear away stone, really. We keep grinding away, and I think I was trying to get to the bottom of the history of it. How cited were they? Did they act quickly enough? Did they actually need to withdraw the licences? This was the sort of real issue.
You see, I think most of my constituents, and most country people in particular, think you just got rolled over. And that you didn't sort of fight the corner hard enough.
Now, we got to some of that. I still think there was sort of ministerial interference along the line, which we didn't quite get to the bottom of, but of course it's given us quite a lot of evidence now to present to either Michael Gove or Robert Goodwill, Minister of Agriculture, when he gets to the committee in June.
It's the law that's wrong, says Natural England.
We could not disobey what the law is.
We don't have enough staff, says Natural England.
What I've seen in the first 4 weeks of being in office is an organisation that now is spread very thin. It's cut beyond the bone in certain places.
And forget how many death threats shooters get from animal rights activists. We worship Chris Packham, says Natural England.
And what happened to Chris was completely unacceptable and is to be condemned, and we did do.
Yeah,
We deplore it.
Staff from the shooting organisations were in the gallery and they found Natural England's explanations disappointing.
Well, of course, that's her job, not to admit anything. But in reality, the people that are out in the countryside are faced with some fundamental challenges. And actually, there's very little information that's being cascaded out, and it's made it very difficult for people in the countryside.
She says there's a lot of information.
Well, yes, and that's her job to say there's a lot of information. But actually, she was struggling to explain to a number of members of the panel of that, the EFRA committee, about exactly what the rules implied.
Some viewers, almost all viewers, couldn't use the Natural England website in the first week of the general licences debacle. Here is Natural England boss Marion Spain's explanation.
There were two initial hiccups, which we regret. One was that the way that the mailbox had been set up, and forgive me here, I will get it right. It wasn't that the mailbox wasn't big enough. The operating system behind it put in a check. So we have more than expected in the first 24 hours, which meant not all were received. Some people had a bounce back. The second thing, we had set up online PDF applications, which are in the way we do all of our licence applications. Some users found they couldn't access those through Apple systems, so they couldn't access them through an iPad. So by the end of the weekend, we'd resolved those two IT things. So there was a period when some people weren't able to apply.
Ms Spain tried to claim that there's really nothing to worry about. Nothing changes with the new licences.
The law protects birds. Birds are shot by exception. An exception is they cause damage to your crops and nothing else is working. And that hasn't changed from the previous licences. That was the premise on which the previous licences were drafting. And the wording is very similar. It may be tighter, again, to make that absolutely clear, but the law has never allowed you to shoot on sight, as it were, shoot as a first resort. The law is that shooting... I mean, I'm from a farming family, just, compared to you. I'm from a farming family and I live in a farming area. I live in a rural area. And the farmers around me have a year-round pest control species. They don't simply rely on being able to shoot as a one-off event. They are doing a number of things to keep the populations across their groups of farms, usually, in control. And the new licences doesn't change that approach.
She also introduces a new phrase into the shooter's lexicon. Section 4 defence. So, either you have downloaded the form from the website, filled it out and sent it, or you are covered by one of the handful of new licences, or you can claim you're shooting because it's an emergency, a Section 4 emergency.
And that is a defence that the law prescribes for being able to act urgently before a licence is issued. So it is a defence, not a licence.
I think that those that are involved in trying to protect crops and livestock, and those that are trying to acting in terms of human health, they could definitely rely on Section 4. It gets far more uncertain when you get to conservation.
But Natural England remains opposed to both pigeon shooting when it takes place on a pheasant shoot and the ability of an allotment holder to protect their veg patch from pest birds.
When this crow is attacking a sheep or a lamb, that is due reason to shoot it, is it?
It is, and that's what the new
so
licence now allows.
Have I got to prove to DEFRA that this crow is attacking this lamb?
No, you've got to satisfy yourself. The licence as prescribed describes those circumstances, describes the livestock. You've got to satisfy yourselves that the crow is likely, or because of past experience, or what's happening elsewhere, is going to attack the lamb, and you have to
satisfy... It's attacking the lamb, it's not a past
experience. Yes, well, that's fine.
This is the bit that's driving everybody absolutely crazy, is this business that we've all got to sort of work out the intention. If the bird is actually taking the crop or attacking the lamb, we know what the intention of that bird is.
She said that there were 50,000 people affected by this licence, but she wasn't challenged about how she come up with effectively such a low number. I think many people watching this would wonder quite how many farmers and gamekeepers and people that are managing wildlife are actually affected by this, and clearly it must be in excess of 50,000.
Is there any way you can put across the value of sport shooting, of tourism shooting, and not just pest control?
I think probably they're looking at it the wrong way around. So the value of sport shooting is being able to create a market for being able to do that control, and that should be celebrated in the UK rather than trying to find a problem with it.
The next step is to put DEFRA under the hairdryer.
So when you took the decision to concede the court case, were DEFRA ministers and the Secretary of State aware at that point?
Yes.
They were completely aware at that point.
That point I made earlier, that we consult and agree any significant changes with them, so they were aware.
But then we hear that DEFRA ministers were coming out and then saying they were shocked by the decision.
Yes, right, exactly.
So I'm a bit...
Can't comment on that.
Okay, well I think that's something we'll have to take up in the next session.
I think fair's got to be
fair. If that is the case, then if that is true, then something within the communication didn't work, did it?
Nobody wants to get into trouble with a court case, and so that's why I think these new licenses will have to be quite clear. If you are shooting a pigeon that's destroying your crop is one thing. If you shoot that pigeon on its way home, are you acting lawfully or not? And I think these are questions for Michael Gove or for Robert Goodwill, because I also think, when I can understand the Secretary of State, wanting to try and take control of it, but it was interesting this afternoon where it looked like there might have been some more licences that would have been already reintroduced by Natural England. So one of the sort of legitimate questions I should be asking the Secretary of State, has his intervention speeded up the process or has it slowed it down?
Natural England turned down our request for an interview after the hearing. If you want to get cross and see the whole of this film, go to our page fchannel/general licenses. Thank you, Neil Parrish. Next up, it's big game hunting in Kazakhstan. We go behind the scenes on Alberto Rizzini's latest trip. Browning has just put out a beautiful film about stalking a Maral stag in Kazakhstan using its auto-reloading Maral rifle. It's 9.5 minutes of gorgeous landscapes and wildlife. But of course there is a lot more to making a film like this, as producer and star Alberto Rizzini explains.
Well, on the video it looks like that I arrived to Kazakhstan, I got on a jeep, I got on a horse, I found the Maral, I shot the Maral and I came home. But nobody sees what's actually went on behind it, We left Ireland on the 14th of September. And the plan was to return on the 29th, but we returned the 5th or 6th of October.
Ready to go!
There was me, 2 crew with me that came from Europe, my staff, and then we had support from local guides. 2 guides came with us, and we had a translator at base camp that we never used. The paperwork started in actually around this time last year, so in May we started all the paperwork from gun licensing and government approvals and importation of camera equipment, authorisation, aviation authority for flying a drone in the wildlife park. So he has taken, pre-production taken 6 months. Browning picked for their self-reload weapon, the Maral, picked the name, the Maral, and after being hunting in Europe, we went to Africa, and then we said we finish the Morale saga with the left-hand Morale that was launched this year in Kazakhstan, hunting a Morale, and that was the conclusion of the Morale saga. It's a big red deer, it's the biggest deer in the family, and it's pretty much twice the size of a European deer.
This morning we have seen the first Morale, around 800 meters. We are pretty happy of the equipment we brought. It was very, very challenging because we were sleeping at 2,000 meters and we went straight up to 2,600 in about 500 meters. It was very steep.
To put it simple, we got in a jeep, we drove for 6 hours, basically a full day. We arrived at the last civilized town. We changed vehicles, we got into more extreme off-road vehicles, and we drove into the night for another 3-4 hours. We arrived at base camp. There we divided our equipment, and the following day we got on horses, and we stayed on horses for nearly 6 days. Then we got a help from a jeep to help us continue our journey, and we came back at base camp 12 days later.
Now our guys, David and Tim, got on horses and it nearly killed them. I mean, you have had some experience of horses, haven't you?
I did, yeah. I've been horse riding all my life, on and off, and I enjoy being on a horse. Maybe my crew did not enjoy it so much after 2 or 3 days, but I'd say I enjoyed it, yeah. Well, my parents brought me to Ireland when I was 11 years of age, and soon I realised that the only way to call an Irishman was to learn their lingo. So.
You're Italian.
I'm Italian originally, and moved to Ireland when I was 11 and stayed there until now.
We're having breakfast, noodles, the usual typical sausage, some sweets.
It was not my worst. I'd say the Swedish sausage is worse than what I was eating there, but it was basic. It was some bread, warm tea, sugar, and cold meat. That's what we survived on for the 12 days, more or less. It's basic. You just drink tea with a lot of sugar. They have this kind of a soft cheese that you put in it, which is sweet. So I think if you use that diet for too long, you become a diabetic. But it worked for us. I have to say I've lost almost 1.5 stone in those 16 days, but it was good. It was good for the mind and for the health.
We still haven't got the Morale. The weather's been good. Today we had an extra nap in the tent, so we're leaving earlier. We're crossing some distance, and we're going to approach the Morale that we have seen this morning.
Alberto is used to this kind of adventure. If he was finding the trip tough, his European film crew were suffering even more.
They didn't cope very well because they were not used to the discomfort that a tent can give, and also they did not understand that by overdressing themselves in the tent, they had nothing to wear when they got out in the morning. So I let them do what I wanted for a few days until they understood what I was trying to do. But it was very, very important for anybody that would go and experience such a trip to bring your own tent and to bring your own sleeping bag and your own mattress, because they do supply it, but it would not be so comfortable as bringing a modern tent from Europe.
And you made them grow beards?
Yes, always. My crew always has to grow a beard to man them up a bit.
It's really tough. We're never going to work together, you know that, isn't it?
We're in unknown territory for me. We have a beautiful landscape, but the Morale is very hard.
Morale tut.
The typical plan is that they take the client out for maximum 2 nights in fly camp. That's what they call fly camp, out in the tents. But I wasn't happy to return because we're going to waste a day to go back to the same distance. So I asked them to go forward and forward and forward. And we ran out of provision after 6 days. And we actually, because of the weight that the horses were carrying for equipment, ourselves, and all the extra things that wouldn't be required usually for a normal hunting trip, they actually started having bruises on their backs, and we couldn't use them anymore. So this guy appeared with a beautiful Jeep and with a big American accent, was like, "Do you need a lift?" So we got into his car. The horses still followed us because we still needed them to move to the hunting spot. And I think it was after 7 days we actually had some eggs and bacon. Well, main camera is a Sony FS7 Mark II. Cine lenses for all the choreography, and for the long shots we use Sigma lenses, telescope Sigma lenses. So that's it gets very heavy and it gets very, very big, and the tripods to sustain such a weight are professional, but they're heavy as well. So yeah, we did have to bring a lot of equipment, and also to protect equipment, which made it even more bulkier and heavier to carry. But it was selected. That's why the 6 months pre-production. We just had everything perfect, and solar panels to charge all our equipment every night. Beautiful landscapes, but not as much wildlife as I would have thought to see. I thought Kazakhstan, being 7.5 times the size of France, only I think less than 2 million people living in it, almost 1 million just in the capital, I thought it was going to be the Garden of Eden, but it wasn't. Morale was hard found, and any type of wildlife was hard found.
Why is that?
I believe technology arrived in the local communities, and they use quads, scopes, rifles, and they've changed their survival hunting habits into a poaching fun habit. That's why Kazakhstan had to generate revenue to protect these areas, and that's why they invite European people to go and enjoy a morale hunt, because the revenue is being given to the local community so that they stop hunting the morale for fun and they connect a value to an animal, and therefore they start protect themselves.
Because your guys are actually
rangers, yes. Yeah. The park is very, very big. I have to say that we walked all of it. I've seen the whole area. I had two rangers with me. Another 4 rangers were patrolling the area. So one ranger usually takes 1 client. In my case, because of the staff, there was 2. And while 2 are working with clients, 4 patrol the area. And still poaching was going on. We could hear sometime at night time Kalashnikovs and all different sort of things, which it was a bit strange, surprising, you know. Mm.
It's been 2 days since our last update. We've been back to base camp. We've been having an afternoon in the sauna, washing clothes, regathering energies. I zeroed the rifle at 400 meters. We came out here last night. We've seen morale in the area, but we think we're going to go back to that mountain range. So once again, we have to pack up all the Vango tents, all the equipment back in the car. Is the new addition to this excursion.
We went to the edge of the reserve, and it's also the borderline, and we turned into a canyon, and we could hear them, but it's a very, very difficult place to hunt. So we made an agreement. I just needed to find a suitable trophy, which it was, but it was extremely, extremely difficult. Usually they don't bring people over there because it's dangerous and it's difficult. So I took the chance. We were very, very tired. It was the last array, as we say, and we just went for it. It was a long shot, but I managed to, even after all the stress and tiredness, I managed to succeed. We have estimated roughly between 750 and 800 meters, because by that stage things had broken, equipment had lost, my range finder had been lost overnight, and one of my scopes, one bag had broken, and it was lost. So it was becoming a distressed, disastrous situation. But by my watch, from the point to where I shot the animal to the point where the animal was 650 meters off this level. It was a stressful moment also because that morning my horse was gone because it was one of the guys took it to do something. So I had all the meat and I had the trophy, and the final scene was to be with the horse carrying the morale and me carrying the trophy with the morale, the brownie morale in front, as you see in the final scene. But the horse was gone, so I had to do the final scene, and I wanted to go from light to darkness, so using the sunset shade. But every time we've redone this, the shadow was coming further, so I ended up carrying the trophy for almost 2 hours, and you can see that I was a bit tired at the end, but it gave realism.
Well, it's a spectacular result. Well done to Alberto for making it and Browning for funding it. And you can click on the link on the screen to watch it or go to fchannel/morale. Thanks, Alberto. Next up, it's a competition to win a Rochan catapult. Here's what a Rochan catapult is. Welcome to the 21st century, because I'm going to unbox the last word in 21st century catty tech. Now, 2 of these boxes turned up from China. I've sent one off up to gamekeeper John at the catapult show, and we've got this one to give away. We have instructions, don't need those, and we have a bag to keep it in. Put that on one side. We've got ammunition, steel balls, uranium tipped balls, no, maybe not. The arm brace, obligatory. I'm going to put all this stuff back together again so that we can send it off to you. And here we have the main parts of the catapult. That looks like a handle, and that looks like it goes on top. We have got probably more Allen keys than I need, spare springs, a scope ring, interesting. That goes on under here, and it's for holding a torch, so you can do nighttime catapulting. So let's get this thing together. I think it's going to be that one, and it is. Dazzling array here. I don't think I could have conceived a catapult this extraordinary. This arm brace slots in there. Now, what's intriguing me is what's in this little tube, this cylinder of glory. Let's unscrew it and have a look. Oh, and it is, as I hoped, a laser sight. What catapulter would not want a laser sight? Let's make sure I put it on the right way around. Goes in there. That's how that works. We have got plenty of rubber, all made up. I think bright green to start with. You may recall when tubular rubber took over from black square section rubber. You may remember when the Black Widow came out with its spectacular arm brace. Well, if you're in any doubt about your ability to win this by simply writing Rochan Slingshot in the comments below, entries will be drawn in the usual way in a few weeks' time. You can buy it on Amazon via the on-screen link for around £50. Got that? Just put Rochan Catapult in the comments below this film on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you find it. Next up, the best hunting and shooting on YouTube. It is Hunting YouTube. This is Hunting YouTube, which aims to show the best hunting and shooting videos that YouTube has to offer. The roebuck season is well underway across most of Europe. Here is a channel called the Lazar Obradovich, who is after them in Serbia. Shooting down under, Ruhin Hunter is out duck hunting and then a spot of fence building. Scandi channel Bear Play has put up new films on its own server. This is the YouTube trailer for a bear hunt film. Our own Wayne Martin is continuing his catapult masterclasses on his YouTube channel. To find out about the right ammo, have a look at this film. Corvid Hunter is air rifle hunting. This is crow and pigeon control within the terms of the general licenses and hide building. Viewer Per Holmseth recommends this channel. Hunt Geo makes the case for hunting around the world. This is a film about the fight against poaching in Uganda. Canada Coyotes Next. Primos Hunting brings out a film with Randy Anderson using a variety of calls, including just his voice, to call in 2 animals. And finally, The History Guy is a hit on YouTube. In this film, he takes as his topic the Great Royal Buffalo Hunt of 1872, which he holds up as an early example of Russian-American diplomacy. That's it for this week. I've put all these films into a playlist for you. Click on the I symbol top right or check this film's description. If you have a YouTube film you would like us to pop into the weekly top 8, email me the link, charlie@fieldsportschannel.tv. Well, that's it for this week. If you haven't done so already, please pop over to our website, fieldsportschannel.tv, or F-Channel if you prefer. And you can click to like us there on Facebook and on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. And best of all, you can pop your email address into our register page and we'll contact you about this show. Field Sports Britain is out 7 PM UK time every Wednesday, and you can back us. Go to fieldsportschannel.tv/shares to find out about that. I'll see you next week. Good hunting, good shooting, good fishing, and goodbye.